The most relevant news of the week in Ukraine today. Russians are once again launching massive attacks on Ukraine's energy sector. The defense forces are implementing sanctions in response. Ukrainian engineers have created their own counterpart to the Chinese Mavic drones. Kornobiliv has more updates. This week in Ukraine, Russians attack the energy sector again and defense forces respond with sanctions. Ukrainian engineers made a local version of the Chinese Mavic drone. Domestic military innovations continue and inventors impress. NATO Secretary General reassures the public about Russia's nuclear threats. Is ready. Meanwhile, Russian special services have become more active in Poland. What is their goal? And the US has given the green light to use Russia's frozen assets. Welcome, I'm Yeva Nikolashvili, and this is Ukraine Today. Like this video and subscribe because we're just getting started. On Saturday night, the occupiers once again launched massive strikes across Ukraine. In total, Russia fired more than 450 attack drones and 45 missiles of various types at Ukrainians. As usual, they targeted critical infrastructure facilities. Energy infrastructure facilities were attacked in the Kyiv, Kirovohrad, Poltava, Kharkiv and Dnipropetrovsk regions. As a result of the strikes, emergency power outages were implemented in several regions. According to Ukraine's Minister of Energy, Svitlana Hrinchuk, the situation remains particularly difficult in the Kharkiv, Sumy and Poltava regions. Attacks on energy and gas sites caused outages mainly in Kharkiv, Sumy and Poltava. According to the Ukrainian energy company Naftogaz, this is already the 9th large-scale and massive attack on the country's gas infrastructure that has taken place since the very beginning of October. In addition to targeting critical infrastructure facilities, residential buildings and homes where people live were also specifically targeted by Russian strikes. For example, at night, a Russian drone hit a 9-story apartment building, causing significant damage and endangering the lives of many residents. The sound of the explosions. In the building, apartments from the 4th to the 6th floors were completely destroyed. A fire subsequently broke out and there are dead and wounded individuals. The latest Russian shelling prompted a response from the president of Ukraine. Volodymyr Zelensky once again stated about
the necessity of sanctions to deprive Russia of the ability to continue the war. For every strike by Moscow on the energy sector with which they want to harm ordinary people before winter, there must be a sanctions response against the entire Russian energy sector. Without exceptions, Russian nuclear energy is still not under sanctions. The Russian military-industrial complex is still receiving Western microelectronics. But the pressure is still insufficient, so Ukrainians are introducing
their own sanctions, drone sanctions. We're talking about strikes on Russian energy infrastructure in response. Just this Saturday, drones attacked, among other targets, the Balashovskaya electrical substation in the Volgograd region. This was reported by local public channels. This electrical substation is considered strategic. It connects the Volga hydroelectric station with Russia's central power system. After the strikes, the governor confirmed a blackout in several settlements in the region. As for what is happening at the front and around it, first of all, right now in our report, the Ukrainian flag is once again in the center of Pokrovsk.
The Ukrainian armed forces have successfully cut off the Russian salient that is located to the north of the city, and intense fighting is already taking place on the bottom of the Kakhovka reservoir. And the latest news, as well as a detailed look at what life is like at the front today, watch right now to stay informed, Sai. Pokrovsk is the main focus of attention today, as it remains a critical point in the ongoing conflict. The main hotspot of the Russian-Ukrainian war. The enemy's main objective is to entrench themselves in the city as much as possible, according to the Ukrainian armed forces. To do this, the enemy is increasingly using civilian clothing. Confident in this, they managed to raise the Russian tricolor on the Pokrovsk City Council building. A few hours later, the defense forces returned. In the Russian-Ukrainian war, the enemy used civilian clothing to raise their flag in Pokrovsk. Ukrainian forces quickly restored their flag, destroyed an enemy post, cleared the building, and fighting continues.
And in other districts of the city, special units of the Ukrainian armed forces have eliminated more than 100 Russian occupiers. This figure only accounts for irrecoverable losses, not including so-called sanitary losses. At present, the main efforts of the special units, the main intelligence directorate of the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine, and the Special Operations Forces are focused on unblocking logistics for the Ukrainian armed forces and expanding the area of presence. At the same time, during the attacks on Pokrovsk, the Russians tried to use the weather as a factor, according to the soldiers on the ground.
And the first attempts to drive through the city with vehicles have already been recorded. Meanwhile, a National Guard drone unit from the Sharp Response Division is capturing an unpleasant
trend. The Russians, at the very least, are currently attempting to enter the city of Pokrovsk by using various types of vehicles. Unfortunately, the weather conditions at this moment are quite regrettably playing directly into the occupiers' hands. As Hostrik Artuze writes, if earlier we saw Russian troops infiltrating Pokrovsk exclusively on foot, and at most there were occasional attempts to break through on motorcycles, today, due to the fog, we have already noticed the first
Russian military pickup truck in the city. They leisurely dismantled the barricades and drove through the streets of Pokrovsk. However, they were later destroyed, analysts add. At the same time, the main fighting is already taking place on the far outskirts of Pokrovsk. Within the city itself, there are still positions both in the north and in the south, as well as on both sides, including the Russian Federation, are especially trying not to draw attention to themselves, so as not to bring a barrage
of drones. The main battles between Ukrainian and Russian units are taking place precisely on the northern outskirts. The Ukrainian armed forces units that remain deeper in the city are not drawing attention for now. Presumably, they are waiting for reinforcements to strengthen their counterattacks. As a result, the Russian infiltration has effectively deprived Ukraine of control over most of Pokrovsk, creating a gray zone. However, even taking it
as our drone operators report, during our assaults, groups of 3 people are usually sent out, with the clear understanding that 2 are guaranteed to be killed, and if anyone survives, it will only be 1.
Russian forces in and around Pokrovsk are suffering heavy losses and struggling to gain control, largely due to manpower shortages and drone threats. Assaults often result in most soldiers being killed, with only a few surviving. Losses in some areas are extremely high.
Russian losses far exceed Ukrainian ones. Troops know this, so reinforcements arrive quickly and in fear. I feel for them. Meanwhile, at the same time,
analysts are noting the successes of the defense forces to the north of Pokrovsk. There, the Russian Federation keeps trying to get behind our group's lines. However, time and again they fail.
Analysts note the successes of the defense forces north of Pokrovsk, where Russian forces repeatedly try and fail to outflank our group. These are tactical successes for the Ukrainian defense forces near Shakov and Rodinsky, 2 key settlements for logistics. Our defenders have significantly improved their positions in these directions. In addition, there has been significant progress in the area of Shakove. This makes it possible to effectively cut off the so-called incursion of Russian troops into Ukraine's defenses. In addition, there has been significant advancement in
the area of Shakove. This allows effective blocking of Russian troop penetration into AFU defenses. Putin's forces are also failing in Kupiansk. The city, which Gerasimov claims has been surrounded for 2 weeks, is resisting so strongly that Russians have not advanced at all in this time.
Not even a meter there. Of course, the claims about the encirclement of Kupiansk just like with Pokrovsk, are not true, because the Russians' plan was as follows: to capture from the north, break through the railway from the south, cut off a large group of Ukrainian troops, eliminate them, and create a breach in our defense. That's what they wanted, but they failed. So the assaults continue with infiltration attempts from the north into the city. But the defense forces of Ukraine are acting actively both in Kupiansk itself
and to the north of it. Meanwhile, fierce fighting is unfolding in the Zaporizhzhia direction right now.
Of the Kakhovka reservoir, yes, it has already dried up enough for soldiers to pass through. As a result, Ukrainian special forces made their way to the Bilshi-Kuchukhuri Islands, where Russian opposition forces were already present. The Ukrainians occupied the islands and now only part of the mainland and raised their flag. And finally, new details have started to emerge regarding the recent strike, as officials and eyewitnesses begin to provide additional information about the incident. These updates are gradually helping to clarify the circumstances and timeline of what occurred, offering a more comprehensive understanding of the situation as the investigation continues.
In Donetsk, as is already well known, of course, just the day before, a warehouse that was storing Shahed-type drones was hit there recently. Now it has become known how many of them were there.
The day before, a warehouse that was storing a significant number of Shahed-type drones was hit there by a strike. Now, it has finally become known exactly how many of these drones were actually present in that location at the time. Let me remind you.
Most experts agree that the strike was carried out by Ukrainian Flamingo missiles, which, in just over 4 days, successfully broke through the Russian
Air defense. Ukrainian engineers have created their own version of Chinese Mavic drones. These birds are in high demand at the front. However, this is just one of the innovations from our domestic military-industrial complex. Our inventors are truly working wonders in the field of weaponry and are lightning fast in adapting to the ever-changing needs of the army. We will tell you about and show you the newest and most effective ones, and are lightning fast in adapting to the ever-changing needs of the army. We will tell you about and show you the newest and most effective developments by Ukrainian military engineers. Real weapons, the weapons of the future, for which even the most powerful NATO countries are lining up in anticipation, and
the world. Reconnaissance, fire correction, target destruction using dropped munitions. The Chinese Mavic drone has become almost the main weapon of the Ukrainian armed forces.
Mr. X invested, created a Ukrainian Mavic, and in the war against the occupier, and now Ukrainian industry has begun supplying domestically produced Mavic-type UAVs to the
front lines. More advanced, and with this Mavic, the Ukrainian counterpart has a greater flight range and can carry a larger payload. It is used not only for reconnaissance, but also for strike missions. The importance of the emergence of Ukrainian drones
in this niche is hard to overestimate, since there are major problems with the supply of Mavics to Ukraine. DJI has banned sales to Ukraine, piously claiming that its products are not intended for military purposes. So drones have to be purchased from third parties. The security issues are obvious. The Pentagon has banned any use of DJI drones, which send data back to the manufacturer. DJI has also added security features that make it impossible to fly in. New models in geo-blocked zones, including countries such as Ukraine, are now available for users to access.
without large-scale explosions, meaning there were no massive blasts or destructive events taking place. Finally,
Mavic, a certified Chinese Mavic drone analog, is a tactical reconnaissance UAV for frontline operations. It differs from the civilian Mavic, which is mainly used by individuals and groups for recreational flying, as well as for capturing aerial photographs and recording videos. The civilian Mavic is popular among hobbyists and professionals who value its ease of use and advanced camera capabilities, making it suitable for personal enjoyment, creative projects, and media production.
For aerial photography and videography. The Mavic is designed for combat conditions. It has a range of up to 15 kilometers, a flight duration of up to 60 minutes, and is equipped with a reliable navigation system that is resistant to interference. As early as last year, the government announced its interest in replacing Chinese drones. Now, manufacturers have already certified Ukrainian Mavics and production has been established. As of today, it is unfortunately impossible to completely and fully replace the entire fleet of foreign manufactured drones that are currently deployed and actively operating in Ukraine in the short term. Our military forces already possess a number of important developments and innovative designs that are specifically created to meet the diverse and evolving needs of our national security and defense forces. Now, it is absolutely necessary to significantly scale up and expand this domestic production, while also working to minimize and reduce the number of foreign-made counterparts as much as possible, gradually transitioning to the use of domestically produced models and technologies.
the price per drone, but the cost of a single mission, while a typical Mavic independent UAV production is a crucial element of modern warfare, and Ukraine knows this better than anyone.
Because both short-range unmanned aerial vehicles, commonly known as UAVs, and long-range strike drones, which are designed to travel greater distances to reach their targets, are important assets in military operations. There is no
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine today. Join us now.
reason
to panic. NATO has a powerful nuclear deterrence factor. This is how the Secretary General of the North Atlantic Alliance, Mark Rutte, responded to the Kremlin's constant nuclear threats and at the same time decided to reassure people. According to the Secretary General of the Alliance, they have become more important elements of national defense. So that they understand how this contributes to overall security. When Russia uses dangerous and uncompromising nuclear rhetoric, our people must know that there is no reason to panic, since NATO has a powerful nuclear deterrent to preserve peace. Rutte stated this, adding that NATO's nuclear deterrence is the highest guarantee of security, and it must remain reliable, safe, and effective. The Secretary General also warned the Russian dictator. He reminded that a nuclear war can never be won and must never be fought. This is not the first time Rutte has hinted that Russia's threats are nothing but fiction. A few days ago, when Putin once again started brandishing nuclear weapons and talking about new tests, Rutte stated that he hadn't brandished them in a long time. He reminded that nuclear war can never be won and should never be fought. This is not the first time Rutte has said Russia's threats are fiction. Just days ago, when Putin again brandished nuclear weapons and mentioned new tests, Rutte said he no longer reacts to meetings organized by Putin. He said Putin is paid as Russia's president, so he organizes them. The Kremlin is fueling anti-Ukrainian emergencies. The goal of these actions is to undermine support for Ukraine and force Poles to pressure their government into decisions benefiting the Kremlin. Russian special services exploit sensitive topics to portray Ukrainians as a greater threat to Poland than Russia. Unfortunately, this work is already bearing fruit. The greatest increase in anti-Ukrainian sentiment is being observed in strategically important cities, Gdynia and Gdansk. It is from there that weapons are being transported. The number
of attacks and violations committed by Poles against Ukrainian citizens has sharply increased over the past year. Ukrainians are being attacked on the streets with shouts of "go back home" and "go to the front." Even children are being insulted.
In fact, it's outright humiliation, let's be honest. They would fall to the ground and shout, "Missile!" Attacks on Ukrainians in Poland have sharply increased.
Even children are insulted. It clearly highlights the contrast, emphasizing the difference.
With the atmosphere of solidarity and mutual support that brings everyone together.
Poland, which welcomed millions of Ukrainian refugees 3 years ago, now faces challenges like a housing shortage, not enough workers, and a rise in crimes such as robbery and data theft targeting Ukrainians.
It has happened more than once that when someone hears us speaking our language, immediately and often quite noticeably, they react, sometimes with a look of surprise, curiosity, or even interest. This response tends to occur in various everyday situations, such as while we are conversing in public places or simply going about our daily routines, and it serves as a reminder of how our language can stand out and capture the attention of those around us.
I've faced unprovoked aggression and insults in public places, even being called a freeloader. Yet in 2024, Ukrainians gave over 18 billion zlotys to Poland's budget, and nearly 1 million used temporary protection. People, ordinary and extraordinary.
Ukrainians in Poland face discrimination and negativity, worsened by Russian disinformation and economic problems.
For services. We live in a time when social networks function as digital gossip. According to Polish law enforcement, from the beginning of the year until July 2025, 543 hate-motivated incidents have been recorded, the most common cases against Ukrainians. If in 2022 there were 317 such incidents recorded, then in 2024 there were already 479. It should be noted that hate-motivated crimes are a form of discrimination and a violation of human rights. Why are Poles looking for culprits among Ukrainians when the enemy has already infiltrated from within? Kremlin bot farms operate online, while spies are active directly in the country. Recently, in a Polish city, a married couple was detained who had been in contact with representatives of the Russian FSB through a scheme involving the receipt of a parcel containing a powerful sample. Russia was preparing terrorist attacks in Europe using drones and canned goods filled with powerful explosives attached to unmanned aerial vehicles. Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk stated that 8 people have already been detained. The case is currently under investigation.
Additional operational measures are being carried out. In the country, they do not openly
accuse Russia and simply do not disclose the reasons why. It remains unclear exactly how the planned sabotage was organized and who is responsible, as investigators are still working to uncover more details about the people involved and the methods they used.
behind it. At the same time, the country is preparing for the possibility
Drones are monitoring airports and bases. For example, during international exercises in Poland,
Dutch military personnel saw UAVs when they set up camp at the airfield. The detection of Russian drones on Polish territory has been linked
to the fact that the number of Polish citizens who are willing to voluntarily mobilize at the very start of the war has actually doubled in size. However, this particular number Despite the threat from the north, Poles are falling for Russian provocations and do not fully trust their leadership. Thank you for watching. The US gives the green light. The states fully support the European Union in using frozen Russian assets as a tool to support Ukraine and end the war with Russia. Reuters reports this, citing its American sources. According to the agency, Washington absolutely supports the EU and the steps they are currently taking to be able to use these assets as a tool. In addition, the United States itself is ready to continue putting pressure on the Russian Federation. The US is currently assessing the consequences of its decision to sanction Rosneft Lukoil and adds that there are more things they could do to try to increase pressure on the Kremlin. Let me remind you, earlier, the European Commission proposed a plan that would allow up to 185 billion euros of frozen Russian sovereign assets to be used without their direct confiscation. However, the adoption of this plan was stalled by Belgium, where the vast majority of the funds are located. Belgian Prime Minister Bart de Wever is concerned that his country would have to bear financial responsibility if Moscow files a lawsuit over this initiative. A final decision on the use of Russian assets in the EU is expected in December this year. Donald Trump is once again on the side of Ukraine. It seems
Across the ocean, they've become disillusioned with Putin. It seems the Trump administration no longer believes it's possible to reach an agreement with the Kremlin about peace or controlling hostilities. Now, the content of the dialogue Russia
has always needed to be supported. Russia has always strictly adhered to and continues to adhere to its obligations under the Treaty on the Comprehensive Ban of Nuclear Tests and it has not decided, nor is it planning, to withdraw from these obligations. We do not have any such plans.
Putin instructed his loyal servants to find out exactly what was going on with great care and precision.
The American plans are threatening us. I am instructing to do everything possible to gather additional information on this issue, to conduct an analysis at the Security Council platform, and to submit appropriate proposals regarding the possible start of development. In particular,
At the next meeting of the Russian Security Council, Bunker was informed about the U.S. intention to deploy the Dark Eagle missile system in Europe and the Asia-Pacific region. By the end of this year, the U.S. plans to adopt the new Dark Eagle medium-range missile system with hypersonic missiles and a firing range of 5,500 kilometers. Furthermore, we anticipate the deployment of the Dark Eagle missile system.
Belousov also informed President Putin that the United States is currently engaged in the ongoing development of a new intercontinental ballistic missile, the Sentinel,
With a flight range that reaches up to 13,000 kilometers, the strategic nuclear submarine is capable of traveling vast distances across the world's oceans without needing to stop for refueling. This impressive range allows it to remain at sea for extended periods, supporting its important role in national defense. Columbia-class submarines and the heavy bomber B-21 Raider. Donald Trump, in turn, confirmed his intention to resume nuclear testing. The process will begin immediately, he stated, in a post published on the Truth Social platform. According to him, other countries are already testing new combat systems, and America must do the same to maintain
the balance of power. This is probably a kind of dance between the Russian and American partners. After all, Russia and Putin are cautiously taking on the role of the lead in this tango, in this dance. I don't think Russia will announce a renewal of its nuclear arsenal again. And Putin are thus cautiously taking on the role of the lead in this tango, in this dance. And I don't think Russia will officially announce the resumption of nuclear research before the Americans do. And in this case, Trump is doing it, among other things, as a response to all these aggressive statements by Putin and the Russian leadership about new military weapon systems that could wipe the entire eastern coast of the US off the face of the earth, or fly for years over the land like a storm petrel, releasing some kind of radioactive vapors. And so this is his response. If, within the framework of the general escalation of the global situation, after the destruction of relations between Russia and the US and the start of the war in Ukraine, such tests could be resumed. By the way, many military officials, both in Russia and in America, as well as in China and France, meanwhile, Washington is strengthening its capabilities in space. The U.S. Space Force
is currently preparing to deploy 2 new advanced weapon systems specifically designed to jam and disrupt Russian and Chinese reconnaissance satellites. According to Bloomberg, the Meadowlands and remote sensing terminal systems will serve to complement the already existing contract systems that are in operation. The new systems are planned to be deployed at various locations around the world, expanding global coverage.
And in some specific cases, these systems will actually be operated remotely by personnel at a distance. They are specifically intended to counter what American military officials are increasingly describing as a significant and growing Chinese space threat to US forces and interests. According to the most recent estimates,
from the US Space Force, there are now thousands of satellites in orbit, and hundreds of them are used for surveillance and reconnaissance. They give the enemy the ability to locate aircraft carriers, groups, and logistics. However, experts are convinced that this is about forming a new level of strategic deterrence. And while Washington and Moscow are comparing their nuclear arsenals, Europe is preparing for defense. The Kyiv authorities are creating a military logistics system. New tech enables tracking, called defensive but seen as deterrence, as Europe and Kyiv prepare for rapid military response.